about that? I mean, you've got the rest of the world. You were in Davos. I was in Davos. A lot of people from around the world saying to us, what the heck is going on in America right now? Do you get that from other leaders as well, what Hillary Clinton is talking about?
I get that not only from world leaders, but from what's going around in this country. From every place I go, from Bakersfield, California and on. And, there's no place for hatred, bigotry, or violence in politics. Think about, as Republicans, we're the party of Lincoln and Reagan. The country was very divided then, but they called on the better angels of the individual to unite this country, and I hope all candidates do that.
Well, what about that? Because now you're seeing this, big assault on Trump from the Republican Party. I mean, you've got people like Mitt Romney and the so-called establishment trying to take him down, saying, look, we don't think he's going to be able to take out Hillary Clinton. We need a different nominee.
Look, the way I look at it, any one of those candidates, Republican, is going to be better than what we've had for the last 8 years. So what I'm focusing on in the House, and all the House members are, I'd like to see more policy. We've got real problems in this country. So we've got to get growth happening. That's why we're going to have a tax plan. What is our health care plan? Instead of just repealing Obamacare, what are we replacing it with? What about poverty? Less upward mobility. Too many people, especially the anger in the middle class, has been the lack of growth for the last 8 years. Then you look at the terrorist attacks. Our national policy is so weak. And for the world to be safe, America needs to be strong. And these are the issues we're bringing forward, and I hope whoever becomes the nominee can grab those policies and make America stronger.
I'm glad you mentioned this, because you have a solid agenda right now, and GOP voters in particular want to know that they're not going to get rolled over, that you're going to implement that solid agenda. And when you talk about poverty, I'm happy you and Paul Ryan brought this subject up, because this is one of the biggest issues the country faces right now, but it's the approach that is different on the two sides.
Yeah.
What's the right approach?
Well, the right approach should be you start from a fundamental basis. Where you were born doesn't mean that's where your lot in life ends up. That America gives you an opportunity to rise to a different place and a different opportunity. For too long, we've had this Democrat approach of this war on poverty that has locked people into poverty. So we're looking at, from a tax basis, from an overall review of the movements of what government has had, instead of forcing to keep you down, but unshackling what keeps you back. And we're walking through these task forces today on all these policies. Have a complete agenda before you go into the convention, which we've been working on all year, so America can see the difference between a future and one that is just talking about the past with Hillary.
And part of that is tax reform. So I want to.
Well, we have tax reform. You'll see, because you've got to have growth. You've had less than 2% or less for the last 8 years. That's why the middle class is actually earning less today and more frustrated. You've got to have growth. Growth solves so many problems. National security policy, health care policy. Look at how much money, even though your gasoline price is lower, where's your money going to? Those higher premiums. It doesn't have to be the case. We could provide a health care system that actually you are in power of instead of government, and your premiums go down. Then we're looking from a standpoint of all these powers of the presidents from these executive actions. Pull that back. Article 1. What is the power of the House? These agencies have become too big, they legislate, and they're too powerful.
So part of this, in terms of the right approach for poverty, is tax reform, is reform for health care, and it's also rolling back certain regulations that have been crippling small business and hurting businesses' ability to create jobs.
Look, when I was 19, I created my first business, and there's 3 lessons.
Kevin O's Deli.
That's right. I was the first to work, I was the last to leave, and I was the last to be paid. It was very rewarding, though. Small business creates more jobs than any other place. And we are at our lowest point of small businesses being created in the last 17 years because of regulation. If people walk across America and listen to small businesses, they will tell you regulations is one of the greatest hardships of ever being able to enter business.
But are we hearing this from the candidates? I've read a couple of your comments about Donald Trump, and you basically said, look, I could work with him. I could work with any of these. So what policies are you hearing, and from whom, touching exactly what you're saying?
Well, the number one thing I'm hearing is government and agencies are creating regulations where they can't start a small business, that you're not having growth, so the income is lower. They think the opportunities are not there. Then every day they turn on the TV and they're watching America empower Iran, or that Russia is stepping someplace else and expanding their territory, or China intervening somewhere else, and the world's becoming unsafe, wondering if our allies still trust us, because it looks like our enemies do not fear us. So the world, to be safer, America needs to be stronger.
I mean, you make a great point.